Good morning. My name is Hien Nguyen. I work with Asian Prisoner Support Committee as an organizer. And today we gather among community members, impacted leaders, advocates, and elected leaders to share about a devastating issue and how the state of California can set the tone for immigrant rights. Currently, immigrant community members have earned their release, CDCR turns them over to ICE. And despite California having a strong commitment to criminal justice reform, immigrant members have been excluded from these reforms simply because of where they are born. CDCR turns people to ICE voluntarily, and it further devastates our communities. So today we introduce the HOME Act, AB 1306. The goal of Harmonizing Our Measures for Equality, HOME Act, is to harmonize broadly supported reforms already in place in California to ensure that equal application to immigrants and refugees will reunite families, strengthen communities, and fulfill the state's commitment to addressing racial injustice and upholding our values of fairness and equality. And with that, I will share the stage with our other speakers.
Thank you, Hien. My name is Salvador Sarmiento with the National Day Labor Organizing Network, and also, as we can see here, one of many organizations, community members, faith, labor, legislative leaders that are supporting this beautiful launch today in California and Sacramento of 1306, the HOME Act. So I have the pleasure of introducing our author on the bill, someone that we have worked with for many years, a leader on this issue. And this issue today is so important that we are here to do this together in California. Because today, as we know, there is a constant barrage of lies told about immigrants and refugees across the country, right? We need California's leadership on this issue, and the HOME Act is an opportunity to demonstrate, one, how we can continue to advance immigrant people's rights, not only in California, but across the country. The HOME Act is an opportunity to remind everybody that all the important steps and reforms that we have done for criminal law reform, we need to make sure that we're not leaving people out. We need to make sure, whether it's deliberately or inadvertently or in practice, as in California, where all of these beautiful, important, necessary, urgent reforms that we've done to address mass incarceration and racism in the criminal justice system, that we're not leaving immigrants and refugees out of those reforms. And that's what the HOME Act is about. And it's a beautiful opportunity, and it's an important bill. And we're super excited to be here with our coalition partners from across the state of California, this powerful, beautiful coalition, and with our author that I'm very excited to get to introduce and to get us started today, Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning. I'd like to thank all of the advocates for being here for this very important introduction of this bill. And I want to thank Assemblymember Ash Kalra. I'm going to ask you to join me at the podium, and Senator Bradford as well to come join me. This is an effort. We are now entering our third year into this effort, and it's you know the way in how we achieve justice sometimes takes time, and it is oftentimes delicate and very important work. Well, my name is Wendy Carrillo. I proudly represent the 52nd Assembly District, which includes the communities of Northeast LA and East Los Angeles and the city of Glendale. It is long overdue for us to put an end to a dual system of justice in California, a system which double punishes immigrants and refugees for certain crimes only because of the country in which they were born. Immigrant communities are subjected to outrageous and unjust double standards who, after having served their time and paid their debt to society, are denied the right to go home, restart their lives, and be with their families. In recent years, we have increasingly come to recognize that over-policing and over-incarceration hurts our state and our communities, and we've given individuals who received harsh sentences as young people the opportunity to earn parole. This has all been done through the legislature. Despite fulfilling every single prerequisite to qualify for parole, immigrants and refugees are denied the opportunity to reintegrate into their communities for no reason, as I've stated, other than the status as an immigrant or a refugee. Long established is the idea that there should be avenues for those whose convictions were tainted by racial bias or those who were convicted under statutes that we have reformed in the legislature to have a new day in court. And we have recognized the need to give incarcerated individuals the dignity to live out their final days and months with their loved ones and with adequate access to medical care. As a state, we have recognized those needs, but immigrant Californians are arbitrarily left out for no reason other than the country that they were born. It is our goal to align our state policies with this vision. It is imperative that we advance and pass the HOME Act, a bill which will end ICE transfers between the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and Immigration Customs Enforcement for individuals who have completed their sentence and have been paroled. My bill, the HOME Act, AB 1306, which drives home a policy that members and advocates have fought tirelessly to advance year after year, would put an end to the cruel twist in the justice system that sees paroled individuals denied the right to return to their families and be provided with post-conviction relief for people who were prosecuted with clear racial bias or had no consideration for their status as survivors of human trafficking or partner violence. However, solely because of their place of their birth, an individual otherwise that would benefit from the changes already signed into law and approved by the legislature would likely find themselves subjected to additional punishment of ICE detention and deportation instead. This bill will create parity for all Californians. When our state prison system turns over individuals to Immigration and Customs Enforcement for double punishment, indefinite incarceration and immigration detention, it adds a sentence that was never handed down by a criminal court and was never part of the conditions of parole. This is an arbitrary sentence served in facilities beyond oversight where abuses are well documented and when there is no right to legal counsel or bail. Countless are the stories of community leaders harmed by ICE transfers from CDCR who would have benefit from the HOME Act have already been in place. Community members whose potential to contribute to society is not dampened by their status as an immigrant. We have here today with us Sandra Castañeda, who despite having her conviction overturned by a judge was transferred by CDCR to ICE when she spent over a year in an ICE facility. That is not justice, that is not our democracy, and that is not California. In the last 10 years, the legislature has eased the path to parole for individuals who receive convictions as young people, offer resentencing for those convicted under the felony murder rule, and codified and created several paths of compassionate release. We can and should do better in our state. Unas pocas palabras en español. Buenos días, mi nombre es Wendy Carrillo. Orgullosamente represento el Distrito 52 en la Asamblea Estatal. Estamos aquí para anunciar una nueva proposición de ley, AB 1306, the HOME Act, que al fin pondría un paso final a la transferencia de inmigrantes de parte del Departamento de Corrección y Migración. Miembros de nuestra comunidad inmigrante son sometidos a un estándar doble injusto, quienes después de haber cumplido su tiempo y pagado su deuda a la sociedad, se les niega el derecho a volver a casa para reiniciar sus vidas y estar con sus familias. En estos últimos años, hemos reconocido que la incarceración excesa no ayuda a nuestro Estado y a nuestras comunidades, y hemos dado a las personas que reciben sentencias severas cuando eran jóvenes la oportunidad de obtener la libertad condicional. A pesar de cumplir todos los requisitos para calificar, a los inmigrantes y refugiados se les niega la oportunidad de reintegrarse en sus comunidades. Como Estado hemos reconocido estas necesidades, pero californianos que son inmigrantes son arbitrariamente excluidos por ninguna otra razón, solamente que nacieron fuera del país. Si nuestro objetivo es alinear estas leyes estatales con esta visión, es imperativo que avancemos y aprobemos el proyecto de ley Home Act. Esta es una ley que pondría fin a la transferencia entre el Departamento de Correcciones y Migración a personas que han cumplido su sentencia y han obtenido libertad condicional. Cuando nuestro sistema penitenciario estatal entrega a personas a ICE, la detención indefinida en inmigración agrega una sentencia que nunca fue dicta por un tribunal penal, por un juez, y que nunca fue parte de las condiciones de la libertad condicional. Esta es una sentencia arbitraria cumplida en instalaciones afuera del Estado de California, sin supervisión del Estado de California, donde se han documentado abusos y donde no hay derecho a asesoría legal o de fianzas. Innumerables son las historias de miembros de nuestra comunidad inmigrante perjudicados por los traslados del Departamento de Correcciones a ICE, quienes se hubieran beneficiado por esta ley. Hoy nos acompaña Sandra Castañeda, quien, a pesar de que su condena fue anulada por un juez, fue transferida por el Departamento de Correcciones a un centro de detención de ICE fuera del estado, donde pasó un año detenida. Esto no es justicia, esto no es democracia y esto no son los valores del estado de California. Ya llegó el tiempo de asegurarnos que tengamos un sistema de justicia que trata a cualquier persona, a todas personas a través del estado de California con el mismo sentido de ley, de igualdad. Por eso estamos aquí para abogar y salir adelante con el propuesto de ley AB 306, the Home Act, para finalmente tener equidad en nuestro sistema judicial en el estado de California. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. We are, thank you. Thank you. We are sending a very clear message in the legislature. Previous versions of this bill, the Vision Act, was a bit more broader and it failed in the state Senate by 3 votes. We have a Democratic Assembly, we have a democratically led Senate, we have a Democratic governor, and California continues to create a dual system of justice that treats immigrants differently, and all of us are here to say that that is not okay. When we pass reforms in criminal justice pieces of legislation, there was no intention to exclude immigrants, and we will do whatever it takes to ensure that the immigrant community, regardless of their legal status or where they were born, receive the same kind of judicial treatment that is equal to everyone else, as they have paid their debt to society, served their incarceration, have been paroled by the parole board, which we entrust in making the correct decision to ensure that individuals are able to return home. We are saying that California will end a dual system of justice that treats immigrants differently, and we will continue to push this policy forward until it is signed into law. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our chair of the Progressive Caucus. I'm proud to announce that this bill is now part of the Progressive Caucus priority package, Assemblymember Ash Kalra.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm honored to join you all today in support of AB 1306, the Home Act. And as Assemblymember Carrillo mentioned, this has been quite a journey. The first bill, I introduced a bill that was vetoed by the governor. Our now Attorney General took on the baton and has passed it to Assemblymember Carrillo. And I know, just like all the advocates here have been fighting year in, year out for this, that our champion, Assemblymember Carrillo, is not going to give up. She's not going to stop. She's going to keep fighting for our community. She's going to keep fighting until this bill is signed into law, and those of us in the legislature that stand with her are going to keep fighting with her. And so the determination of the community that's here, of those that are affected, of the activists, of the organizations, empowers all of us to continue this fight. Because in California, our policies should be driven by our values: equality, fairness, compassion, and common humanity. That's what we talk about all the time. And we are really quick to condemn the Trump administration for what they do to our immigrant community. Our own Democratic administration at times, when the way that ICE operates in our communities. We point our finger at DC all the time, but we need to point our finger at ourselves sometimes and see what are we doing that is failing our community. Transferring Californians who have completed their sentences in prison or jail to ICE detention is a cruel double punishment that disproportionately targets Black and brown communities, including the API community. I'm here with my colleague, Assemblymember Lee. As members of the API caucus, we have to make it clear this issue affects all of our communities. Southeast Asian refugees have been especially impacted by mass incarceration and deportation, with many Southeast Asian refugees being 3 to 4 times more likely to be deported for past convictions than other immigrant communities. Now is the time to challenge the systemic racism that has inflicted tremendous suffering on families across our state. Every incarcerated community member has loved ones and communities who care for them. Every incarcerated member has their own story and journey of transformation. And, especially in this time of increased violence against immigrant community members and significant racial tensions, we must pass the HOME Act and protect vulnerable communities from the tyranny of ICE. And as Assemblymember Carrillo just mentioned, I'm very proud of the fact that the Progressive Caucus is prioritizing this bill. We're going to organize around it. We're going to fight for it. Because in California, we are proud of the fact that we are home to immigrant communities from all around the world. And it's time for us to bring our loved ones home. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Steve Bradford, and I represent the 35th Senate District, communities of Gardena, Torrance, Carson, Compton, Lawndale, and communities of Watts and San Pedro. And it's truly an honor to join both Assemblymember Ashkara and our author here, Wendy Carrillo, with the HOME Act 1306. It's vitally important. We shouldn't have a double standard here in California. If you've served your time, if you're eligible for being released from custody, then that should happen. Our Department of Corrections should not be in cahoots with ICE to resentence individuals who have paid their debt to society. They should be allowed to go home to their families, to the communities in which they're loved and needed in order to restart their lives and be contributing members to society. We all deserve second chances, and this is what this bill is about. Equity, fairness, as we've heard. We commend all the sponsors and the advocates who are here today. We thank you for your tremendous courage and your examples of what second chances look like. And I stand here strongly in support of this measure, and I look forward to it making its way to the Senate and me casting a vote for it. So I commend Wendy and also Assemblymember Alex Lee for their leadership here today and moving this measure forward. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alex Lee. I represent California's 24th Assembly District, which is actually the most API majority district in the entire state. And as you've heard from many of the speakers before, this bill seeks to end the cruel double standard that exists for our immigrant communities. No other group is targeted this way systemically with double punishment. People who have rehabilitated, who want to atone, who want to give back for the wrongs they've done, should be given that chance to go home. And home is California. It's not back in Asia, back in Europe, or in any other continent where people are sometimes sent across. I'm struck, especially since my district is an Asian American district, that I'm struck by the stories where we've had to sometimes intervene and ask for pardons for folks who could be transferred to ICE, and maybe they were born in Cambodia, but they grew up entirely, lived entirely in California, and sending them back to Southeast Asia or sending them to another country is cruel. It is one of the most cruelest form of an ancient kind of forms of punishment. It's excommunication, and that should not be the case, not for immigrants, because in California, we constantly say diversity is our strength, that we welcome immigrants, welcome people from all across the world, and that should be the case. So if we are serious about that as Democrats, as a state government, as a state legislature, we should send this bill to the governor's desk and for him to sign it. And I think this ought to be a no-brainer for California because we celebrate and we welcome that kind of diversity. And it is nowhere more felt than oftentimes in my district where I feel that we have so many people from across the world, from all different backgrounds, and everyone, no matter where they were born, ought to be able to stay home in California. And that's why we're going to work tirelessly until we can pass the HOME Act and send it to the governor's desk. Thank you.
Hi, and I'm very excited that we're going to be hearing from two community leaders that can speak from their own hearts about what is this bill really about. And so for starters, I'm very proud to introduce the Immigrant Justice Coordinator now at Viet Rice, who himself lived through what this bill is about, and he'll tell you more personally. His name is Tin Nguyen, and he actually was detained at Adelanto, which has a whole history of abuse that we don't have to go in now, but without saying more, this is Tin Nguyen.
Thank you. Hi, like my colleagues say, my name is Tin Nguyen. I'm an Immigration Justice Coordinator at Viet Rice. Where do I begin? I mean, through my 23 years of incarceration, I began to take responsibility for my action, for what I have done. And I took numerous of self-help classes. I earned a AA degree, a bachelor's degree, graduated summa cum laude. I trained self-to-dog to become service of a veteran with PTSD. Where this led to my commutation from Governor Jerry Brown, and where the commissioner stated that I was no longer a threat to society, but an asset. But upon my release, as I watched my fellow peers walk out to the gate of freedom, hug their family and their loved one, enjoying the day that they paroled, they worked so hard for, I was shackled and cuffed and transferred to ICE detention center in El Lanto for 10 months, once again fighting for my freedom. And not even know if I was going to go home because it was the height of COVID. Where was my protection? Where was my protection? Had I would have been born here, I would have been supported by the state. They would help me. They would support me, but I wasn't born here, so they gave me up. They gave me up to ICE, where ICE could continue to punish me. And this is what the HOME Act is about. It's about fair and just. I love what what she said. The dual punishment. The dual system. And we deserve it too, right? I work just as very hard on my transformation as any other person that my peers that have paroled. So this is what the HOME Act is about. It's protecting people like myself that have committed into their transformation, that is qualified under existing reform for the double punishment, the cruel double punishment. And it's just right. It's the right thing to do. It's a humane thing to do. It's a just thing to do. Thank you.
I would like to introduce our next incredible speaker. Sandra Castaneda is currently a trainee at Homeboy Industries, one of the largest reentry organizations in the state of California, I believe even the world. And despite being exonerated of her convictions by a judge, CDCR still turned her over to ICE, where she spent over a year in ICE detention, thousands away in Georgia. Luckily, with the support of community and advocates, Sandra is finally home, reunited with her family, and finally getting a start at her reentry. So with that, I welcome Sandra.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Sandra Castaneda. I did 19 years in prison for a murder I didn't convict. I went to board, I got commuted by Governor Newsom, and then I also got resentenced by SB 1437, so I got released last year in July 27, but instead of coming home, they gave me to ICE. I was put in a plane and sent to Lumpkin, Georgia, where I stayed there for a year and 6 days, not knowing what was going to happen to me. I grew up in LA, and it was devastating having to, be able to finally come home after sitting in prison for all that time. And, at the end of the day, they tell you, you know what, you're not going home, you're getting transferred. It was heartbreaking for me and my family, being away, somewhere that I didn't know nobody. I don't have my support system over there. My legal system was over here too, so I feel really alone. It was heartbreaking. The situation in ICE was very devastating, and I did feel treated less than human while being in ICE. Luckily I'm home, and I'm supportive of this new bill. Like it's needed. It's crazy how after sitting in prison doing time, we got to come out and still, get punished again. Please, help pass this, the new Home Act, AB 1306. Please, we need it, and I appreciate it myself. Thank you.
And some remarks from Phil Melendez now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Phil Melendez, Director of Special Projects with Smart Justice California, and I am proud to stand here in support of the Home Act. Because right now, as you've heard, we have a two-tiered system of justice that treats you differently based on where you were born, and that goes against every fiber of who we are as a state. It's time that we stop this unfair double punishment and live up to our shared values of equality, fairness, and common humanity. And that common humanity is important because when I was 19 years old, I was sentenced to life in prison. And after 20 years of incarceration, I was able to return home to my kids and my wife because of criminal justice reforms that were passed right here in this very building that recognized my humanity and potential to transform myself and contribute to my community. Specifically, I benefited from a law that recognized that longer sentences don't keep us safer and gave people who received convictions as youth an opportunity to seek their freedom sooner. But my story is not unique, as you've heard here today. Earlier this year, actually, I got more examples of folks that are still inside who need this law desperately. So earlier this year, Smart Justice California visited Pelican Bay State Prison up in Crescent City, and we spoke with men who were taking college courses to nourish their minds, self-help and rehabilitative programs to nourish their souls, and reconnect with the greatest parts of themselves. These folks had taken a deep, hard look at the harm they've caused in the communities and were ready to return to their families and communities and give back. We met several folks who would soon be released, but for some, that joy of finally leaving prison was dampened by the reality that they would not get to come home to their loved ones. We spoke with one person who'd been a child soldier in Liberia and had been subjected to extreme trauma that morphed the trajectory of his life. We also met a man who had become a talented coder through the Last Mile program and was soon to be deported to Mexico. And I saw so much of myself and so much of my journey in them. And I was reminded that while California is working to overhaul our criminal justice system to address harsh sentences, racial bias, and enhance community safety and well-being, we still have much work to do to apply these reforms equally. So I urge members of the legislature to pass the Home Act to ensure that existing laws that they worked hard to pass to reduce mass incarceration and address racism in our legal systems are applied fairly to all Californians. Thank you.
So with that, we wrap things up. The committee hearing is actually going on right now, so we have to go back and get it done. And that's kind of the message today. The Home Act 1306, California is going to get it done and take the next step in our history of progress on immigrant rights and criminal law reform. So thank you, everybody. And some folks are going to be available for interviews also. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Of course, of course. Of course.